Donald Trump has been indicted on 38 counts of federal crime, and his fellow Republican and conservative thought leaders are not handling it well. And it's hilarious. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe, and enjoy the video. So there's this great and iconic German word called schadenfreude, which is simply to take pleasure or delight in the misfortune of others. And in concept, like in theory, it's a really ugly notion, right? And yet, it's something that animates the modern Republican Party. We see it all the time, especially when Donald Trump, took the scene and took the reins of the GOP, and it became just openly spiteful and openly malicious. Every time President Biden trips or experiences some sort of misfortune, they delight in it, they mock it, they take pleasure in it. But if the shoe is ever on the other foot and liberals, progressives, or whatever make fun of a Republican who happens to step on a rake or experience some sort of embarrassment, then they clutch their pearls and say, "How dare you? So much for the tolerant left." Because again, it's one of the many double standards that the right seeks to entrench and exploit. They can be spiteful and malicious and petty and cruel publicly. But if there's any of that reciprocated from the left, then they take great offense to it because they're thin-skinned hypocrites. And, the situation with Donald Trump is a great breeding ground for schadenfreude because, again, this is a man who was once the most powerful man in the world, and he may yet again be if he wins the nomination in 2024 and then the election. It's still possible. And he's, a billionaire, and he's basically been privileged his entire life. And he is a malignant narcissist and a man of unique spite. We saw it during his presidency. We saw it during his campaign. He is a profoundly cruel man. So now that he's experiencing potential consequences for his many crimes and many habits of corruption, it's okay. It's perfectly reasonable to take pleasure in that and to not see it as a sad, dark day. No. It was a sad, dark day that this man did what he did in the first place. That's sad and dark, that a man of that privilege, of that power, especially when he was elected president of the United States, demeaned the office, demeaned the government, demeaned the Constitution in the way that he did. That's sad. It is not sad that the Department of Justice is boldly and courageously seeking to punish him for his many crimes. That said, if you are having a bad day, I would like you to watch this video and take heart, take a bit of joy in the dismay of major Republican leaders and conservative thought leaders who are not handling the news that Donald Trump, for the first time in his 76 years on this planet, may experience some degree of accountability for his many wrongdoings. So I have a couple of clips I want to play for you, and then some tweets I'm going to read. So let's start with Mark Levin, one of the prominent Fox propagandists. Let's start with Mark here.
President Trump is 76 years old. If the Department of Justice gets his way, he will die in federal prison. Merrick Garland is a mob lawyer. Jack Reed is a rogue Soviet-style prosecutor. So I suppose over there at the Department of Injustice, and this clown prosecutor spent a lot of time at The Hague, they probably figured these laws could be used to try and entrap Trump. Be no obstruction issue of any kind, not even in anybody's imagination. A document case faces 100 years in federal prison. Is this some kind of a sick joke on the American people? Joe Biden had to sign off on that's becoming a National Archives case to have it go to the Department of Justice. This should never have been a criminal case. What did he do with the documents? Did he sell them to the enemy? No. That's why we have an Espionage Act. So there is no violation of the Presidential Records Act. They indict him today in Miami. All of a sudden it's in Miami. This Attorney General who pretends he's Helen Keller. You want to talk about an insurrection? This is an insurrection. Let me go on. Joe Biden is the crookedest crook that's ever been in the Oval Office. $10 million coming from the Communist Chinese military. Bob Alinsky, Mr. Big, come and catch me if you can. Don't be bamboozled by these cable channels. There is no law.
So you get the picture. I want to play one other quick clip of Mr. Levin here, and we'll go from there.
Die gesamte Generalität ist nichts weiter als ein Haufen niederträchtiger, treuloser Feiglinge!
Mein Führer, ich kann nicht zulassen, dass die Soldaten, die für Sie
Just kidding. That was from a very iconic movie called Downfall, which depicts the final days of Adolf Hitler, undoubtedly an idol of Mark Levin's. I've got another one, Judge Jeanine Pirro, another prominent Fox propagandist. Let's see what she has to say.
I am so livid right now. We saw it from the time he came down that escalator. Biden, and she told Obama she was going to do it to get rid of her email scandal. So they went to a FISA court judge. They lied 3 more times. They needed to get this guy. And then they violated the 4th Amendment rights of one American and spied on a presidential candidate. The FBI telling social media, you can expect that there's going to be Russian disinformation in the form of a Hunter Biden laptop. The DOJ, the FBI, the CIA say, oh, this is Russian disinformation, when we know damn well it wasn't Russian disinformation. And now what you've got is a loser prosecutor, Jack Smith, who's been slapped down by the United States Supreme Court. And let's put in espionage. We can kind of tie it into the Russian collusion so people will say, oh, it could have been the Russians. This is nonsense. And I want to know, how many documents were altered? How many documents were destroyed? 0. Hillary Clinton. She destroyed them. That was tampering with evidence. That was obstruction of justice. I hate a country that is akin to a third world country. When you indict one guy running for president and the guy who's doing it is some old geezer who says, you know what? I don't know anything about it. We finally get a 1023 from a credible FBI source. Credible. $200,000 worth of credibility. And I'm not done yet. I'll tell you something else.
So Judge Pirro is not handling it well either. Now I want to play one other clip real quick, and this one actually is considerably less deranged, but in some ways it's even more aggravating. It's someone I pick on quite a bit, the alleged moderate Republican Nancy Mace of South Carolina. Let's hear what she has to say when it comes to some of the situations. Obviously not her entire comment, but it's enough of it for you to understand her true colors.
Script of this audio recording that is now in the hands of prosecutors, admitting that he held on to secret information, did not declassify it.
Right. This is the first I'm hearing about it now. But my question would be, the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, had classified information. He was not able legally to declassify that. And those documents were in his garage, unlocked, scattered about. Former Vice President Mike Pence also had classified documents. He didn't have the ability to declassify information. So whatever the standard is going to be, everybody, whether they're president or vice president, current or former, need to be held to the same standard, whatever that is.
Gotta love that whataboutism. So it is true that the Department of Justice ended its investigation of Mike Pence a few days ago. The investigation into President Biden is still ongoing, and we don't know where it'll go. Now, it's unlikely that he'll be charged because, of course, there's a long-standing Office of Legal Counsel opinion going back, I think, to the 70s, where the Justice Department will not indict a sitting president because they think it'll disrupt his duties as chief executive. But he may face penalties after he leaves office. We don't know. But anyway, I'll just say to recap those 3 clips, Levin is insane. And again, a lot of whataboutism. He doesn't want to handle the facts. He's just upset at the prospect that, well, Trump is old, and if he is convicted of these crimes and sentenced to the maximum sentence, he may die in prison. Well, that's a lot of if, but I can't imagine Mark Levin ever holding such a standard for, I don't know, if it were the shoe were on the other foot and it were Joe Biden. I can't imagine that he would be so passionate in defense of Biden. Biden's 80 years old. How dare you throw the book at him, or anybody else in like a similar situation. Judge Jeanine, again, tons of whataboutism. She didn't even assert the facts, and she even went so far as to say she hates this country because she says it's a banana republic. Like, it wouldn't be a banana republic to not prosecute credibly criminal former leaders, simply based on the fact that they were former leaders. Like, they just get quite literally a get out of jail free card. That sounds like banana republic stuff to me. And then Nancy Mace. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nancy Mace has the aesthetic of a moderate. She plays up that role fairly well on her appearances on, CNN. She goes on CNN regularly, so she's seen as more of a moderate one. I think she's even done interviews with MSNBC. She's been on Real Time with Bill Maher. So she goes out of her way to try to affect the disposition of a moderate. But when push comes to shove, she's as radical and cynical as most of her Republican cohorts. And again, a lot of whataboutism. Well, I didn't know that that Trump, publicly admitted or admitted on a recording that he retained a classified document and that he hadn't declassified it and that it was still classified and that he shouldn't have it. But what about Joe Biden? Well, again, there's substantive differences between the Pence case, the Biden case, and the Trump case. Pence and Biden, based on all available evidence, as soon as it came to their attention that they had classified documents, they proactively reached out to the Justice Department, to the National Archives, and made them aware. Said, hey, we found these. We know we shouldn't have them. We don't want to keep them. Come get them. Whereas Donald Trump, for a year and a half, lied and jerked around, in the words of his own former Attorney General, Bill Barr, the Justice Department. That is a major substantive difference, whether Republicans want to hear it or not. So Just to end on a couple of things, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump's major rival for the Republican nomination, he says the weaponization of federal law enforcement represents a mortal threat to a free society. We have for years witnessed an uneven application of the law depending on a political affiliation. Why so zealous in pursuing Trump, yet so passive about Hillary or Hunter? I'll remind you that Hunter Biden was not a government official at any point, and so as a civilian probably deserves considerably less scrutiny than political leaders like Trump and Hillary. So the DeSantis administration will bring accountability to the DOJ, excise political bias, and end weaponization once and for all, which is ironic for two reasons. Number one, again, DeSantis is running against Trump, so I don't know what he's thinking to do here by... He's kind of walking this awkward tightrope where he's supposed to be distinguishing himself from Trump and trying to alienate Trump, but he's so desperate for Trump supporters that he can't afford to stay silent on the matter or to even support the indictment. So he has to, I don't like this guy, he's terrible, but also I want to protect him and whatever. Nikki Haley, of course, did the same thing. Oh, I'll also say when it comes to DeSantis, the other irony is that he's been credibly accused of weaponizing Florida's Justice Department for his own political benefit, so I'm not sure he has any credibility here. Nikki Haley, another Trump rival, but considerably less popular than even DeSantis. This is not how justice should be pursued in our country. The American people are exhausted by the prosecutorial overreach, double standards, and vendetta politics. It's time to move beyond the endless drama and distractions. Again, no refutation of the indictment, no refutation of the charges or the evidence submitted, none of that. Just, we're tired of the drama. It's political. How vapid. Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, today is indeed a dark day for the United States of America. It's unconscionable for a president to indict the leading candidate opposing him. Joe Biden kept classified documents for decades. Now, I'll remind you, it was not President Biden who indicted anybody. President Biden had nothing to do with this. It was a grand jury of Floridians, people who live in Florida, Trump's state, a red state, Florida, who were presented with the evidence by Jack Smith, and then the majority, or all of them, we don't know, is either unanimous or is at least a majority, said, you know what, Trump should probably be indicted for this. So it wasn't Biden, had nothing to do with Biden. I, and every American who believes in the rule of law, stand with President Trump against this grave injustice. House Republicans will hold this brazen weaponization of power accountable. Again, hilarious when you consider what House Republicans have been doing with their congressional majority. And then last but not least, Charlie Kirk, the, figurehead, that's a pun, of the TPUSA conservative movement. Man, he has just been on it. There's not even a single thing. Let's see. The indictment estimates that Trump's trial, but they want to sideline Trump, who's the leading presidential candidate, and have him sit in court instead of campaigning. There's no law in America. There's a list of rules selectively applied depending on the party registration of the target. One day, hopefully soon, powerful, corrupt Democrats are going to start getting indicted. They started this. This is the only way to stop it. I think every single Republican nominee should be down in Miami Tuesday night, standing for justice in the country. Then he, of course, cites Levin and everything else. So Charlie Kirk is not having a good couple of days either. I think he even called for every other Republican nominee, including DeSantis, to suspend their campaign and go down to Miami in a show of solidarity, which would be foolish. So anyway, that's it. I'm sure there's going to be more rage from the Republican Party and conservative thought leaders as time goes on, but I wanted to share some of those with you. And so again, if you need to pick me up today and you need something to just lift your spirits, the bitter, bitter tears streaming down the ruddy cheeks of MAGA cultists everywhere should be enough. Tasty.